He walked out of death row in a suit. It sounds like the beginning of a bad joke or a scene from a Hollywood movie that's trying too hard. But on a humid Thursday afternoon in November 2005, this is exactly what happened in downtown Houston, Texas. A man is walking down the busy corridor of the Harris County Jail. He's not running. He's not sneaking in the shadows. He's walking right down the center of the hallway, under the bright fluorescent lights, surrounded by armed deputies and surveillance cameras. He is wearing a sharp, dark blue dress suit, crisp khaki trousers, and a pair of fresh white tennis shoes. He looks important. He looks busy. Around his neck, swinging slightly with each step, is an official identification badge that says he works for the Attorney General's office. He passes a guard station. He nods at the deputy behind the glass. The deputy sees the suit, sees the badge, and nods back. The heavy steel door buzzes open, and the man steps through. He gets into an elevator. He's alone for a moment. He looks at his reflection in the metal doors. Just 10 minutes ago, this man was wearing a bright orange jumpsuit. He was shackled. He was in a cage. And he wasn't a lawyer. He was Charles Victor Thompson, a condemned double murderer scheduled to die by lethal injection. He is currently in the process of pulling off the most audacious, embarrassing, and terrifying escape in the history of the Texas criminal justice system. He isn't digging a tunnel, he isn't blowing up a wall, he is social engineering his way out of a maximum security facility by simply pretending he belongs there. But before the elevator doors slide open and expose him to the main lobby, you have to understand the sheer insanity of where he is. This isn't a small town police station where the sheriff is asleep in the back room. This is 1200 Baker Street, the Harris County Jail. It is a massive, imposing fortress of concrete and steel designed to hold over 4,000 of the most dangerous criminals in the state. It is the third largest jail system in the United States. To get from the cells to the street, you have to pass through a gauntlet. There are layers of electronic interlocks where one door won't open until the previous one is closed. There are metal detectors, there are bulletproof glass control booths manned by deputies who watch every movement on banks of monitors. There are armed officers patrolling the corridors. Every single inch of this building is designed to tell you one thing. You are never leaving. And Charles Thompson isn't just a regular inmate who might get lost in the crowd. He is a death row inmate. He is the highest security classification possible. Men like him are usually moved with a 3-officer escort. They are handcuffed, shackled at the ankles, and wearing a belly chain. They are never, ever supposed to be alone. The idea that a man with a death sentence could simply change his clothes and walk out the front door is theoretically impossible. It is a failure of the system so catastrophic that it shouldn't be real. But Charles Thompson knows something the system doesn't. He knows that security isn't about steel bars or cameras. Security is about people. And people can be tricked. People see what they expect to see. If you act like you own the place, if you wear the right costume and walk with the right confidence, the human brain assumes you belong there. He is betting his life on a psychological blind spot. However, to understand why he is so desperate to leave and why the state of Texas is so desperate to kill him, we have to look at the monster beneath the suit. This isn't a charismatic thief or a wrongly accused hero. Charles Thompson is a man driven by a dark, obsessive possessiveness that destroyed 2 families. 7 years before this walk down the hallway, Thompson was in a relationship with a woman named Denise Hayslip, but relationship implies a partnership. For Thompson, it was ownership. When they broke up, he didn't move on. A week before the murders, he was caught confronting Denise, resulting in an assault charge. Most people would take this as a wake-up call to stay away. Thompson took it as a challenge. He began carrying a pistol. He started drinking heavily. The rejection ate him alive until April 1988, when he decided that if he couldn't have her, nobody could. He went to Denise's house at 3 a.m., drunk and seething with rage. He kicked in the door. Inside, he found Denise and her new boyfriend, Darren Kane. Thompson didn't hesitate. He pulled out a .32 caliber pistol and opened fire. He shot Darren Kane 4 times in the chest, killing him almost instantly. Then, he turned the gun on Denise. He looked at the woman he claimed to love, the woman whose only crime was wanting to be free of him, and shot her in the face. Amazingly, Denise survived the initial shooting. She was rushed to the hospital fighting for her life, but Thompson's darkness ran deeper. While he was in jail awaiting trial, he wasn't praying for forgiveness. He was trying to finish the job. In a detail that reveals the true depth of his psychopathy, Thompson actually attempted to hire a hitman from inside his cell to go to the hospital and kill Denise while she was recovering. He approached another inmate, giving him a hit list of witnesses to eliminate. He failed to hire a hitman, but tragically, Denise died from complications of her wounds a week later. This is the man currently standing in the elevator, adjusting his collar. He is a cold-blooded double murderer who slaughtered 2 people because his ego couldn't handle rejection. The stakes of this escape are not just about a prisoner getting free. It's about a lethal predator being unleashed back into society. If he gets out, nobody is safe. So, how does a man in bright orange shackles become a lawyer in a suit? The plan didn't start that morning. It started months ago, born from Thompson's arrogance. He is intelligent, articulate, and completely narcissistic. After his conviction, he did something rare. He fired his lawyers. He petitioned the court to represent himself in his appeals. He claimed he was the only one smart enough to save his own life. The judge, bound by law, granted the request. This was the fatal mistake. By representing himself, Thompson gained privileges that other death row inmates could only dream of. He was granted Pro Se status. This meant he needed access to the law library. He needed unsupervised meetings with investigators. He needed access to a phone. But most importantly, it meant that people in the jail started seeing him differently. He stopped being Inmate Thompson and started being Mr. Thompson, the guy acting as his own attorney. He spent hours every week in the legal visitation booths. He was polite to the guards, he learned their names, he chatted with them about their families, the weather, sports. He wasn't acting like a prisoner. He was acting like a colleague. He was grooming them. He was slowly, methodically lowering their guard, making himself a fixture of their daily routine until he became invisible in plain sight. But he needed props. A suit, a badge. The suit was the easy part, surprisingly. Because he was his own lawyer, he argued that he needed civilian clothes for court appearances to ensure a fair trial atmosphere, or to take photos for legal purposes. The system, clogged with bureaucracy and terrified of a mistrial appeal, allowed it. He managed to get a dark blue shirt and khaki pants brought into the facility's legal storage area. They were kept there for him. Legitimate props for his legal theater. The badge was a masterpiece of prison ingenuity. He didn't smuggle it in. He made it, using nothing but determination and scraps. He noticed they were simple laminated cards. He found a way to get access to simple art supplies. He cut a picture of himself out of a magazine or a legal document. He used transfer letters, the kind you use for school projects, to spell out Office of the Attorney General. He laminated it using clear plastic tape he'd scavenged. From a foot away, it looked like a child's art project, but Thompson knew that people don't look at badges closely. They look at the lanyard. They look at the confidence of the person wearing it. That Thursday, Thompson requested a meeting with his investigator. This was his ticket out of the high-security death row wing. His guards shackled him, walked him down. On the way, he requested to retrieve his civilian clothes from the storage locker, ostensibly for legal purposes during the meeting. The guards allowed it. He carried the bundle of clothes into the private meeting booth in the visitation center. This room had no cameras inside. Attorney-client privileges. The investigator arrived, but Thompson had no intention of discussing legal strategy. The moment he was alone in the booth, the clock started ticking. He knew he had a very small window before a guard would check on him. He stripped off the bright orange jumpsuit that marked him as property of the state. He pulled on the dark blue shirt he had just retrieved. He buttoned the khakis. He laced up the white tennis shoes. He took a deep breath. This was the moment of no return. If a guard walked in right now, it was over. He would be thrown into solitary confinement forever. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the fake badge. He hung it around his neck. He checked the door. It wasn't locked from the inside. He pushed it open. This is where the psychological warfare began. He stepped out of the booth into the visitation area. A guard was sitting at a desk nearby. This guard knew Thompson. He had seen him in his orange jumpsuit a dozen times. Thompson didn't freeze. He didn't hide his face. He walked directly toward the guard, looking him in the eye, and flashed the badge. He mumbled something about being done for the day. The guard looked at him. The brain is a funny thing. The guard saw the suit. He saw the badge. He saw a man walking with purpose. The pattern recognition in the guard's brain said lawyer, not inmate. So the guard buzzed the door. Thompson walked through. Step 1 complete. But he wasn't out yet. He had to get to the lobby. He took the elevator down. The doors opened and the air changed. The lobby was full of people. Families of inmates, lawyers, police officers. It was chaotic. This was his cover. He walked toward the main exit, but there was one final obstacle. The booth at the front door. A deputy sat there checking the ID of everyone who left. This was the filter. This was the last line of defense. Thompson approached the glass. His heart must have been hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, but his face was stone. He held up his badge, pressing it against the glass. The deputy squinted. The badge looked odd. "Hey," the deputy said. Thompson stopped. The world seemed to pause. "That badge," the deputy said, "it doesn't look like the standard issue." This was it. The gig was up. A normal person would panic, they would run, but Thompson is a sociopath. He doesn't feel fear the way that we do. He leaned in, looking annoyed, like a busy bureaucrat dealing with an incompetent employee. "It's the new design from the AG's office," Thompson said smoothly. "They just issued them." He didn't blink. He didn't sweat. He sold the lie with absolute conviction. The deputy hesitated. He didn't want to be the guy who harassed a state prosecutor over a badge design. He didn't want to cause a scene. He made a choice. He nodded. He pressed the button. The heavy click of the lock disengaging was the loudest sound Thompson had ever heard. He pushed the door open. The humidity of the Houston air hit him instantly. The noise of traffic, the smell of exhaust fumes. It was the smell of freedom. He was standing on the sidewalk in downtown Houston. A man sentenced to die, standing among the people he was convicted of endangering. He didn't run. Running attracts attention. He just walked. He walked with purpose down the street, turning a corner, and then he kept walking. Back inside the jail, the clock was ticking. It took about 15 minutes for someone to realize the meeting room was too quiet. A guard went to check on the attorney meeting. He opened the door, but the room was empty. On the floor, in a crumpled pile, lay the bright orange jumpsuit. Panic. The code went out over the radio. Escape. We have an escape. The facility went into lockdown. Doors slammed shut, sirens began to wail, officers sprinted through the hallways, but it was too late. The bird had flown. The news broke like a thunderclap. A death row inmate was loose in Houston. The city went into a state of shock. Photos of Thompson were plastered on every TV screen. Helicopters swarmed the sky. The US Marshals, the Texas Rangers, the Sheriff's Department, everyone was mobilized. But Thompson was gone. He had vanished into the urban sprawl. For the families of Denise Hayslip and Darren Kane, this was a nightmare come true. The man who had slaughtered their loved ones was free again. Thompson, meanwhile, was improvising. He had the suit, but he had no money, no car, and no phone. He was a shark out of water. He needed to move. He walked to a nearby payphone, but he couldn't call anyone he knew. His lines would be tapped. He needed transport. He found a bicycle, sitting outside a shop, perhaps left by a student or a courier. He took it. He pedaled through the back streets of Houston, his suit jacket flapping in the wind. It was absurd. A double murderer in business casual riding a stolen bike. He rode until he reached the Greyhound bus station. He ditched the stolen bike in an alley nearby. This was a dangerous choke point. Police monitor bus stations, but Thompson got lucky. He approached a stranger, a random man hanging around the station. And this is where he used the most despicable lie of his entire life. It was November 2005, just 2 months earlier. Hurricane Katrina had devastated New Orleans. The city of Houston was filled with refugees, people who had lost their homes, their clothes, and their entire lives. The country's heart was bleeding for these victims. Thompson saw this tragedy not as something to mourn, but as a tool to use. He walked up to strangers, looking disheveled in his suit, and put on a mask of despair. "I'm a refugee from Katrina," he told them. "I lost everything in the storm. I'm just trying to get to my family in Louisiana." It worked. The kindness of strangers meant for the victims of a national disaster was stolen by a killer on the run. A stranger, moved by his story, gave him money for a ticket. Thompson walked to the counter, bought a ticket to Shreveport, and boarded the bus. He didn't hop a freight train or ride the rails like a hobo. He sat in a cushioned seat surrounded by passengers riding in air-conditioned comfort while a massive manhunt scoured the streets of Houston behind him. He arrived in Shreveport, Louisiana the next morning. He was 230 miles away from his cell. But the adrenaline was fading, and reality was setting in. He was tired, he was hungry, and he was an alcoholic. This is where the mastermind facade began to crack. Thompson was brilliant at manipulating the system, but he was terrible at managing his own demons. He found a spot near a liquor store called Daiquiri Unlimited. He needed money to keep moving. He had managed to contact his family or friends and arrange a wire transfer. He was waiting for the cash to arrive at a Western Union or MoneyGram located nearby. This was his fatal error. He couldn't leave the area until the money arrived. He was stuck. He bought alcohol to pass the time and quiet the noise in his head. He drank. He drank to celebrate. By Sunday, 4 days after his escape, he was a mess. He was disheveled, the crisp suit was wrinkled and dirty, he was loitering outside the store, drunk and impatient, waiting for the transfer that would never come. But he had made a mistake. He had underestimated the reach of the manhunt. The US Marshals hadn't just been looking in Houston. They were tracking everyone Thompson had ever known. They knew he was desperate for funds. And the public was watching. A man across the street saw Thompson. He saw the suit that looked out of place on a guy standing by a payphone. He saw the face that had been on CNN for 3 days straight. The man flagged down a police officer. "I think that's the guy," he said. "The one from Texas." The Shreveport police officer approached Thompson. Thompson was on the phone, visibly intoxicated. He saw the uniform. He saw the gun. The officer asked for ID. Thompson didn't reach for his fake badge this time. The game was over. The energy left him. He slumped against the phone booth. "You know who I am," Thompson mumbled. "I'm the one you're looking for." He held out his hands, and the officer cuffed him. It was over. The 96-hour freedom ride of Charles Victor Thompson had come to an end. in a drunken stupor outside a liquor store, waiting for a wire transfer. They brought him back to Texas in shackles that were tighter than before, and this time there was no suit. There was no pro-se status. He was thrown into the deepest, darkest hole the Texas prison system could find. For Thompson, the escape was a Pyrrhic victory. He had tasted freedom. He had proven he was smarter than the guards, but he had also sealed his fate. Any sympathy he might have garnered during an appeal was gone. He had proven he was too dangerous to live. As of now, Victor Thompson is awaiting execution, scheduled for January 28th, 2026. If it goes forward as planned, he will be dead within a month. If you enjoyed this Prison Break case, check out the channel. There you'll find many great stories just like this one. If you like what you see, please subscribe. I'd be very grateful, and I'll catch you next time.